what pieces of advice have you heard that would go against having a long, happy relationship?
The number one piece of advice that I think is completely counterproductive to a long lasting relationship is the whole playing it cool. And, it's not about playing it cool, it's about being cool. Playing it cool is like mirroring. If she takes long to text, you take long to text back. If she wants to go to the club, you go to the club. If she's adding girls, like adding guys, you're like it. All of this kind of protest behavior, behaving like you're in a chess game. But in the reality is, to have a long lasting relationship, you have to communicate your actual standards. So if you're playing games, you're going to attract a woman that also plays games, and you're both going to be speaking the same toxic language. And eventually it's going to wear down. Whereas if you effectively communicate your standards, and your standards happen to be high value, that's more effective in creating a long-lasting relationship. So I would say the whole playing lots of games, it might work in the short term, but in the long run, you're both going to wear each other down.
Okay, so what would be a standard that, as an example?
So what I would say is, like, say for example, you don't want to give her too many, you don't want to express too much interest early on, or you don't want to give her too many compliments, or you want to take a couple of days to reply to be cool. And I get that it definitely creates desire, but it doesn't create connection. And so as a therapist, you're looking at that and thinking that will create desire and intrigue. But what you're doing is you're going to be attracting toxic women, because toxic women who have got lots of issues like men that are unstable and don't give them security, because that's what they're used to. But stable, long-lasting women with standards and boundaries will immediately be turned off by that behavior. So you're actually ending up with a small pool of women.
But some of those things help a man not appear so eager and needy.
Mm-hmm.
And then that actually helps him even attract the woman at all. I.e., like doing too many compliments, showing too much interest, texting a lot, trying to meet up with them a lot. It's really hard to give advice that strikes the exact perfect balance. So sometimes it's easier to give the advice to just say, hey, let's lay off some of those
Yeah,
things.
and I completely understand why men tell each other that, because there's nothing more unattractive from a woman's perspective than a man who is really needy and clingy and all of those
Right.
But
Yes.
there's women are completely skilled at telling the difference between a man who genuinely hasn't got time and energy to be texting and calling, and one that's playing it cool. And the one that's genuinely not haven't got time to be texting and calling is the one we're attracted to. But the one is playing the game is the one that you then play games back with. And this is something men don't realize. We have a radar for the difference. And we know the difference, and it's unconscious. It's totally unconscious, but we know. So the best advice to give a man is be a busy man.
Yes.
Be a man who's at the gym,
Yes.
who wakes up early, goes for a run, goes to the gym, then works on a side hustle, I know it's really difficult. I'm saying this, but it takes a lot of energy to be a busy man. I personally couldn't do it. I couldn't be a man if you paid me, because it's so much effort. It's so much effort. You go to work, have a circle of friends, have to really kind of fill your hours up. And then by default, you end up being the guy that doesn't have time to text all the time, doesn't have time to give all millions of compliments. And by becoming a man, you become a man that actually, by a byproduct is you have game. But by being a man that hasn't fulfilled his potential, you have to fake it till you make it. And women know the difference, unfortunately.
I hear you, and I agree with you. I agree. It is definitely much better to be the guy who is actually busy, who is actually high value,
Yeah. And
instead of
who isn't
faking it.
fazed by beautiful women all the time. Like, he sees a beautiful woman, he lets her know she's beautiful, reminds her she thinks she's beautiful, but her beauty is not going to allow her to get away with nonsense with him. And you have to become that man, because a lot of
Ah,
men, when they aren't or used to it, they allow a woman's looks to lead to disrespect. They take a lot more. And we as women know that beauty is power, and we know it's a privilege, but there's nothing more attractive and there's nothing that will make us submit more than when you meet a man who recognizes your beauty but isn't phased by it. And that's a
Yes.
really hard skill to teach. It's almost a skill you have to experience. And it's so
Well,
hard
yeah, I
because not
mean,
everybody can experience it. It's so difficult. I hate saying it because it's almost saying it like it's so easy, but it's the most difficult thing in the world to be this kind of man.
well, the teaching leads to the experience,
Yeah,
right? It's like you can learn it and all the dating advice you want, but then you have to implement it and put it into practice.
absolutely.
You have to date a lot of attractive women to not be so swayed by her looks and treating her and putting her on a pedestal.
You know,
So you don't
from
put
the
up with
man's
some of those
perspective,
things.
what is it like when meeting attractive women when you're younger or for the first time? What is it like for a man? Does it kind of numb them a bit? Do they get a little bit like they let them get away with a lot more? Does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a lot of experience with women who are super attractive, what ends up happening is that lack of experience translates to then being so excited by
Mm,
having this opportunity to be with someone
mm,
who's attractive, and because you don't have all that experience, you almost are in this scarce mindset. And I've said this before, is men are by default in scarcity and women are by default in abundance in terms of their availability to the opposite sex. So because of that scarcity, someone who's just entering, like, oh, okay, I'm 17 or 16 or whatever, even 30 or 40, and just for the first time experiencing what it's like to get maybe attention or even a conversation with someone who's attractive, because of that scarce mindset, you end up screwing it up because they're so high in a pedestal. And so that becomes where you treat them like a queen and they can get away with so much, and this is what can lead to a lot of disastrous
yeah, they get away.
relationships.
And but one thing that men have to really realize is how you feel around a beautiful woman is how beautiful women feel around successful men or men that don't, that actually have fulfilled their potential. When we meet a man
Yes.
who's fulfilled his potential, as in he takes care of his appearance, he works hard, he's busy, he's got friendship circle, his mind is occupied, we are just as intimidated by that type of man as you are by a beautiful, Instagram girl, because we see that man as, oh my God, I wouldn't be his be all and end all. He's got so much going on in his life. Wow, like, okay, I need to come correct. And it's the exact same thing. We have the exact same level of intimidation by those men as men do with beautiful women. You just got to remember that. Whereas we really remember that our beauty will intimidate you. So we work on that. Men don't always remember that
Yeah.
their value and their success intimidates us in the same way, and they forget
Yeah.
that. And they focus a lot on how they communicate with us, but really when you meet a man who's a CEO or successful or doing really well, he doesn't even have to talk, we're already attracted, because he is the prize, not how he talks to us and not the game he spits. And it's similarly with beautiful women. She doesn't actually have to say a lot. She will just be who she is enough to intimidate, and it works both ways, but just in different dimensions.
Yeah. No, you're totally spot on. And that guy is scarce too, by the way.
Absolutely, and they
Right?
they are,
There's not a
you
lot of like super high value men.
no, but you know what? It's not as difficult as it sounds. All high value means, from a woman's perspective, is a man fulfilling his potential, mind, body, and soul, fulfilling his potential. It doesn't mean he has to be the richest guy in the world or he has to be the most handsome man in the world. He's doing his absolute best. That's what we are
Yes.
attracted to.
Yes, and
And you can,
he
yeah.
can't be a starving artist.
Yeah, well, yeah, he can't be a starving artist. But then I would argue, is that him doing his best? Because say, yeah,
Ooh,
is
good
because what I
point.
would say is, say for example, he's an Uber driver. This is no disrespect, but say if he is an Uber driver, and there's a cap of how much he can earn. I would argue, babe, are you doing your best in life? Is this your best? I don't think it is. I'm sure you've got other skills or avenues, or use your connections, take out a loan, invest, do your best, because this isn't your best. I'm sure everybody can tap into their best, and that's what high value essentially means. If you're not that educated, you're not that skilled, your best might be you take up double shifts. 3 shifts of Uber driving, but you're doing your best, and that's attractive. It won't necessarily get you the top range women, but you will definitely get respect from your woman, whoever she is.
Well said. Well said. Okay. I want to, that's awesome. And I want to kind of dive back into something we said a little bit earlier
Mhm.
because I'm curious. Okay. So you're a therapist, you
Yes.
work with men and women.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You said something earlier about you feel that men have it really hard.
Oh,
Okay.
incredibly.
So I'm curious if you had to say who has it harder, men or women, based on, of course, your personal experiences being a female, but also the fact that you talk to men and women on their deepest, darkest
I don't even have to think about
situations.
it. It's men by a mile in every
Really, you
arena.
would truly believe that?
In every arena of life, they have it harder
Tell me why.
because we can become damsels in distress. We have that get out of jail free card where I can tomorrow be unemployed and there will be a man in my life at some point that will say, okay, you know what, Sadia, come on then, let me, I'll look after you. Whether that's my dad, my brother, or my partner, somebody will save me. And majority of women, and they don't have to be beautiful. I'm just saying they just have to, they can experience that. And one thing you'll find as a woman, the more of a damsel in distress you are, the more men actually want to look after you. They do more for you. A man can absolutely hate his job, hate his appearance, have terrible relationships with his family, and not one person, no one's coming, no one's
No,
saving him. And
nobody.
it's
It's all up to
heartbreaking,
him.
yeah, because one thing I've noticed is, for me personally, if I'm forcing myself out of bed in the morning to go to work, I'll just say, I don't like this job, I'm quitting. And then I think there's men out there who have that experience all day, every day, up until they're 70 years old, and think if they don't go to work, kids don't eat. And there's women that experience that too. But the pressure on a man is completely different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I would say, on a financial level, I wouldn't trade places with a man ever. In terms of like family issues as well, it's just like with women, when we go through something, we talk to a million people about it. We'll talk to our hairdressers, we'll talk to our friends, our family. Any problem we have, we dissolve it through communication. With men, they absolve it, they internalize it until one day they have a breakdown. But it's internal that I couldn't do if someone paid me. Like, I couldn't hold that in. And just in general, I just think like there's so much pressure on them. There's so much pressure on them to be be something spectacular, especially in this day and age. There's pressure on them to be spectacular, whereas for women, all you have to do really is stay on top of your weight, learn to cook really well. I know this is probably going to sound terribly, but really, if you really want a man to be with you, cook really well, keep on top of your body, and be presentable, and just learn not to be promiscuous. Don't be too promiscuous, and you can get it. And these are all reachable targets. But telling a man you have to be a CEO to get this girl, or you have to work these many hours to pay these bills, I personally couldn't do it.
Yeah. Because you just said earlier that an Uber driver wasn't enough.
Well, he is enough for some women, but he won't be enough for the woman that he probably dreams of.
His pool of, of availability is going to be smaller.
Absolutely. And it will be a woman that he will just get by with, but it won't be a woman that he would be excited about, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Maybe I could be completely wrong, but to get that woman that you probably had pictures of on your wall, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that.
You know, it's interesting too because a lot of women, modern women, Western women, would hear what you're saying a second ago. They wouldn't like that too much.
I could
But
care less. I know it sounds I could care less, because I'm British. I'm born and raised in London, but I'm ethnically from Pakistan, and I'm Muslim. And these are values and traits that I haven't lost in my experience. And I come from a different culture. And when you come from two different cultures and you live in one society, what it does is it helps you detach from both. You end up staying detached from both, and you actually just pick what actually works. And what I've learned in my experience is what actually works is what actually works is having awareness of that your gender is your superpower, and by negating it, you're losing access to your natural your core abilities. So I don't agree with the idea that men and women have to be exactly the same. I think we should try and learn each other's needs and meet them rather than pretending we have the same needs.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, I think that the stats will show it for itself. I mean, it just will show what actually works and what doesn't work. It's like we don't even have to sit here and try to convince men or women. If you just look at the statistics of who's getting together and who's happy based on their goals and what they want, you're going to see.
What is it like for you? I mean, you're American, I'm guessing. Do you guys believe in more equality, or do you agree with gender roles? What do you kind of feel about that?
What I've been seeing is less and less over the year,
Mm,
and over the years, it's more and more about, well, it's interesting. I want to say it's been more and more about equality, but that word somehow isn't translating to what it really means. Like we talk about equality, but then we talk about gender roles, and to me, those things are separate. But for some reason, there's so much in the same conversation. You know,
yeah.
it's like feminism basically means a baseline that men and women are equal or should have equal opportunity. But then it goes deeper than that into, okay, well, what works to get a man attracted, what works
Yeah.
to get a woman attracted. And now, because of all the new opportunities that women do have, they are taking those opportunities. They're more in the workforce, and they're focusing on marriage and meeting men so much later in life. And now more and more of those women are becoming single for a lot longer and not accomplishing those goals.
And the thing is, no matter what, for both men and women, humans in general, no matter how good every arena of your life is going, your romantic connections are the biggest predictor of your overall satisfaction of life. So delaying that
Right.
or ruining that for the sake of your employers who will not even come to your funeral, can I just add? They will not come to you. They don't care about you.
Nope.
And yet you're prioritizing them over the one person that is actually responsible for your happiness, which is your partner.
Yeah.
And
It's relationships.
yes, relationships,
Yeah.
your connections with people, women especially, they value connections. And you'll get to a certain age as a woman, like in your late 30s, and so on and so forth, where the only question people ask you is, how are your kids and how's your partner? Then no one cares about what you're doing work-wise or job, like a career, like where you're traveling to. And so at a certain age, 40, 50, whatever it is, that's the only question you're going to be asked. So that's shows you what your end goal is going to be. And if you keep
Yeah.
trying to negate that and dilute that, you're doing your future self a disservice. And I mean this for men and women. I don't mean this just for men. I think women. I think men are also a little bit deluded into thinking they don't need relationships and they don't need marriages and stuff. But I promise you, it's a huge predictor of your mental health in the future. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish
Yeah.
we could be independent, but we're not designed to be.